All right, welcome back to the show, Holistic Health Magazine radio show, all about recovery on Sunday night. We want to welcome back to the show. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, we want to welcome you. Blog Talk has been linked up with us for about 3 weeks now, and we're really enjoying the Blog Talk listeners and, of course, the local listeners on WWNN 1470. And, of course, the listeners that are logged on across the country from HolisticHealthMagazine.com that are streaming live right now, of course, over at HolisticHealthMagazine.com. We want to welcome all you listeners tonight. And, again, it is all about recovery. And if you're just tuning in, we have, of course, some heavy hitters here tonight with us. We have Dr. Adam Friedman, and he is going to be speaking to us about, of course, eating disorders and eating in general. And we're also going to be speaking with Satara from the National Recovery Foundation, who can help yourself or loved ones get help. And in studio with me right now is Dr. Adam Friedman. How you doing tonight, Doc?
Good, John. How are you?
Good, man. Listen, let me set the 10 for the listeners. What made you make a decision? Because I know you were on other things before you did this.
Uh-huh.
And what were you doing prior to becoming a doctor and dealing with eating disorders?
I was mostly in the financials. I had a seat on the New York Commodities Exchange for about 4 years. I traded gold and silver, and I opened a brokerage in Fort Lauderdale.
And what did you do? What was the major factor? What was the deciding factor to move out of that and to start helping people with addictions?
I guess it came down to feeling like a person is what they do. You know, you can call yourself a good person, but if you're on the phone every day trying to screw people out of money, then that's what you are. You know, and I think at some point you have to make a decision in your life, what is it I want to do and what direction I want to go as far as my contribution to larger things, mankind, and helping, you know, the fellow man.
You know, it's funny, I ran biz op rooms for many years, and I understand that philosophy. And, you know, if you continue to hurt people and you put that out in the universe, sooner or later, you're laying under a bridge.
Absolutely. You know, and I wanted to tell you, hearing your story was absolutely inspiring. And I think you talked about other people not giving up hope in you, but, you know, I hope you realize the biggest factor was at some level you didn't give up hope on yourself.
And I think when you die, that little spark of hope is gone. And I think that's what ends it. I think it's all the noise. See, when I came in, I had a 2,000-piece band playing in my head, and it was saying everything and singing everything that was the most negative stuff.
Sure.
And somebody had the wisdom to tell me, listen, if you don't think you're going to be uncomfortable while you're going through this process, you're surely lying to yourself, because you're going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to just wake up one day with spiritual Red Bull wings on your back and, you know, everything's going to be okay.
Well, you know, a lot of my patients with eating disorders talk about that. They actually personify the eating disorder as a separate entity at times that's talking to them, that's telling them that they're fat, that they're going to fail, that this is useless, that they can't recover, that they shouldn't recover, that their version of what they look like is the true version, and everybody else. I actually have a patient that told me that when she looks at Dunkin' Donuts or Wendy's, she honestly thinks that people don't really go in there, that these are just things put up for people to look at, but there can't be real people inside.
And when you deal with an addiction like this, I'm sure what's the relapse rate for the eating disorders? There are a lot of people that, you know, one day they're doing fine for 3 months, 6 months, and then boom, the next thing you know, they're purging again or whatever.
Sure. You know, I think quite often this happens, and one thing I try to help them with is differentiating between a relapse and a lapse. You know, I think at times they will have a day or two where they feel like they haven't done their best. And again, I think with all addictions and eating disorders, there's such black and white thinking. It's either a good day or a bad day. I'm either eating good food or bad food. I'm either going to be absolutely perfect or absolutely miserable. So I try to help them find that gray area where you can have a momentary lapse in anything in life, no matter what you're doing. You can have a momentary lapse, but that doesn't mean that you have to fall completely off the wagon and give it up.
And I want my listeners to understand something. When we talk about, like, the type of addictions that he's talking about, an eating disorder or something like that, we're not talking about drug addiction. Drug addiction, in my opinion, is a day-at-a-time situation. And what we're shooting for is at a day at a time, we're shooting for every day for 100% abstinence, because we cannot grow if we continue to relapse. And again, with just like eating disorders, with addiction, like heroin addiction and alcoholism, you die from it. So if you keep playing with it, you will die eventually. It's just a matter of time. So that being said, give a little bit of a background on what eating disorders are, like bulimia and things like that. Just give kind of a background.
Well, you know, I'm very interested in words. I think words have tremendous power, and I think the more we define our words, the better we can have an understanding of what a patient and a therapist can agree on. For instance, a patient can come in and say, you know, I'm depressed. And I think most therapists will just say, okay, and go on with that. But, you know, the amazing thing is if you ask somebody, depressed in what way, you will hear 1,000 different answers from 1,000 different people. I'm depressed like I want to kill myself, like I want to kill somebody else, like I want to run away, like I want to hide, like I want to cry, like I want to scream. So I think words need to be defined. And when you say eating disorders, I think the first thing you have to look at is the word disorder. To me, disorder means anything that is messing with your day-to-day functioning. If, you know, everybody thinks about food, and I think most people have times in their life where it's a bigger issue than other times, but the fact is, can you still go to work? Will you go out on the weekends because you're not thinking, well, you know, I'll have to go out to eat? Can you wake up in the morning and do what you need to do without it interfering with you? And if the answer is no, then I believe that is a disorder. If the idea of food and calories and what you look like and what you weigh are so big in your mind that you can't get through the day the way you used to, then that's really what an eating disorder is. And then from there, it separates into individual categories. You know, anorexia is being 15% below your what your body is supposed to weigh on a given scale. And that includes people that, you know, purge through vomiting, purge through exercise, or restrict eating altogether in order to keep themselves at that weight. It literally is Greek for, you know, a fear of fat. Bulimia is when, you know, people are binging and they're purging as well, or if they're just purging, but they are over that, you know, 15% below body weight standard.
Okay. And when you start to deal with the denial, because I know with everything comes denial, how many family members have you had call you and say, hey, listen, we know that, you know, little Susie or mom or, you know, Uncle Joe or whoever it is has a problem, but they don't believe they have a problem. How do you deal with the denial of this?
Well, you know, I think it's important for them to be able to come to me when they're fairly ready. You know, a lot of these eating disorder patients I have are children. And if the first experience they have with therapy is being thrown into it kicking and screaming, my biggest fear is that that's going to give them a taste in their mouth about therapy that's going to last them the rest of their lives. So if they're absolutely unwilling to go, they need to go into an inpatient facility if they're at that much risk to themselves, or they need to wait until they have some inkling about being ready. I think there's also denial within the families. A lot of times the patient knows that he or she is having a real issue with food, but the parents will say, well, it's not that big a deal. They're making a bigger deal out of it. So it's a very intricate way of dealing with these people and letting them understand that, you know, this is a problem, especially if it's bulimia or compulsive overeating, because anorexia, the look of anorexia gives you a visceral reaction. You see somebody that's so emaciated, you know, you can feel it in your soul. But when you see somebody that looks normal to you and I, but is having these problems, sometimes the family is inclined to make light of it.
And so the end result is bottom. Everybody has to hit their bottom.
Sure.
The family members have to hit their bottom. The patient has to hit their bottom so they can truly be helped, just like anything else.